Right, today's video I want to see if I could get this personal stereo cassette player working. This is a WM-FS555, part of Sony's S2 Sports range, which means it dates from the early to mid 2000s, and that makes it one of Sony's very last personal stereo cassette players. And whilst the radio on this works just fine, it's the cassette mechanism that isn't working, and no doubt that's because it needs new belts. And hopefully, if we get this working, we'll be able to find out whether or not Sony's end-of-the-line personal stereo cassette players are better than the top-of-the-line ones that you can get nowadays. I suspect the answer to that we already know, but hopefully we'll be able to find out later on. Let's give it a go. Right, let's just see how difficult it is to get into this. If it is just those two screws inside here, it's not going to be difficult at all. The fact that it's all sealed makes me think that this whole section should just lift out, or at least give us access to the belts underneath. Let's have a look. Hold on, do it from that side. Oh look, it all comes out in one go like that. That's good. Now we've got to have wires attached. I'm just going to lift this off the tape to enable me to have a bit more flexibility moving this around. There we go. Right, okay, so we can put that out of the way. Yeah, there's a screw there, there's a screw there, and that seems to be it. Right, so we'll take this one out. Right, one more to go. Okay, take the washer off with it as well. That's interesting, it's got a little peg on that I didn't notice. Hold on, that's the volume control. No, put that one back. That's nothing to do with it. We don't want to get involved in that. There's a clip there. There's a ribbon cable here. There's a bit of belt there. Let's get that out of there. Okay, so I've had to break the magnifier out for this one. We're going to desolder these four wires. I've noticed they've helpfully written the colours of them on the circuit board. Now I've also downloaded the service manual, and that suggests also desoldering the parts of this ribbon cable here. And I don't fancy doing that because I suspect if I did that I would damage it. So my intention is just to fold that over so I can take these out and fold the whole circuit board over. At least that's how we're going to go with this. And I don't know if you can see, it's difficult because I can see better than you at the moment. I've got more of a magnification, but underneath here there's a wheel, and on there is the majority of the belt. It's this black gunk, and there's a little bit more black gunk down here. In fact, I can get that piece out there. But I think the first job is to desolder these wires here. Right, let's see if we can flip this over. Right, well we've got to the mechanism. I just want to support this though, so let's just pop it up on a cassette. I mean, when you look at something like this, and you wonder nowadays how they ended up getting the cassette mechanism so large again, because look how thin this is. That's the motor there. I mean, that's super thin, isn't it? I mean, what happened there? How come all the motors nowadays are a centimetre thick again that they put in these modern day cassette players? Right, so there's a little bit of stuff on that wheel there. If I could just sort of pull that off there, that'll be better. Yeah, right. You can see the belt's built up on that section there, and then it's come across to here as well. So if I can just pick a bit of that off there, I will do, because I don't want it touching the top of the motor here. Right, so I've just put a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in that cap there, and I've got these nice pointy little sticks for cleaning things like this. And I think we've got off really quite luckily here, because there's no belt in these little thin grooves, and that's a git to clean out. It's just got a tiny bit on the top there, and then it's all wrapped around here. So I'm just going to clean that first, so that we make sure we've got all of it off there. See how much of this belt we can capture first. The fact that that rotates is a bit annoying. I'm going to tape that down, I think, because I'm just going to be chasing this round over and over. So let me find a bit of tape just to stop that from spinning. And now hopefully we can start to get some of this off. The bigger the bits we can remove, the better. Like a spider. We might have caught this just in time, because it hasn't completely turned to gunk yet. It's still relatively intact. We'll try and get that off the circuit board while we're here. We don't want that interfering with the motor, so let's just, there we go. That's most of it. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but it looks to me that there's a little bit of black on the inside of this wheel here. And I just want to make sure there's nothing left behind, so I'm going to clean it out by using some dental floss soaked in isopropyl alcohol and just rub it back and forth a bit. Right, well that's that job done. We managed to get all the larger sections of belt out of the machine quite easily. We've cleaned off any residue that was left behind on the motor here. Fortunately there's none on any of the plastic components, so now I've just got to wait for this new belt to arrive and then we can start putting the thing back together again. Now I printed a few pages from the service manual and I also downloaded and printed the instruction leaflet, and if you look closely here you might be able to see a copyright date on this of 2002. So that dates this product to that year. Now another bit of information here, you see there's two product numbers for what effectively is the same device. In the US you could get both of them, and then in other countries you just get one of them. What's the difference between these two? Well, that's revealed in the instruction booklet here, where it states about using the supplied headphones, but in brackets for the customers who purchase the 556. So that's the difference. The 556 comes with headphones, the 555 doesn't, and the headphones are these ones here that clip over the top of the ear. Another couple of little bits of information that are on here. First off, battery life. Look at that. 32 hours of playback on tape for just one AA alkaline. That's really efficient. They really had it all figured out by the time they were making this thing. Another little bit of information on here. You know, I mentioned this seal that lets the air out. In the service manual, as well as that, once you open it up, inside there is the tape speed adjustment, the pot which will adjust the tape speed, and in fact that is just there on the circuit board. Now another thing it mentioned in these instructions was the fact it suggested that you replace this gasket every year and you take it to an approved Sony service centre, and also suggests in the instructions that you clean the tape heads every 10 hours. The only other thing I want to mention here is the fact that the belt has arrived, so we need to put that in. Now this has come from Fix Your Audio. In fact, here's a little card from them. Now I always get my belts for Walkmans from fixyouraudio.com. This is not a sponsored video, but what happens with these people is you go on the website, you put the model number in of the product you've got, and it tells you which belt you need and you put the order in for it, rather than trying to measure it up yourself, especially when you've got like a lot of gunk in here. So you know you're getting the exact right one. And also, the belts that these Walkmans use aren't the ones that you get in those packs with a random selection of differently sized belts. No, they're particularly thin Walkman belts, I mean really thin. And basically this place makes their own, so you know, if you want them, get them from the right place. I think there's a couple of suppliers that do similar things, but I always use these people. It's your choice as to whether or not you do. So the main thing I needed to do here was figure out the tape path, which is why I downloaded and printed that service manual. So let's just find that page in here. Right, so this is easy to follow. It goes around the motor there, under that one, and around that one, whilst avoiding this stuff here. So let's do that. We're just going to get it around the edge of this wheel. There we go. Right, I'm going to watch we don't catch anything. So under there. Oops, bugger. Hold on. I think it's easier if I just get it on those two to start with, and then bring this one down here like this. Right. Right, well that's in place. Very fine tolerances here. If you just look how close that belt comes to this piece of plastic. But it just about misses it, and it just about misses that centre pin there, but only just. But going back all the way to 1979's device and then looking at this in comparison, they've really managed to squash things down to a very, well, I'd say simple mechanism, but clearly incredibly complicated engineering has gone into this to create something as simple as this. And really the size of it, when you look at the size of the case, you could get quite a small Walkman around this. If you look at this bottom section here, that's where part of the AM antenna goes. and we've had those gumstick batteries which will make this part slimmer. So you could really come up with quite a slim Walkman using this mechanism, although it is a mechanical one rather than a touch control. But still, we've got our belt on now. Anyway, enough talking about it. Let's see if we can get this thing back together and get it working again. Right, now this is the part where it's very easy to damage something, so I'm going to be ever so careful with it. So we need to fold that back over here. Right, so if we've got the wires in roughly the right place there, we can then clip this back down again. So it's under these two clips at this end. The battery connections are in the right place. It's just got a little bit of a wobble to it, which I'm concerned about. But I think what we need to do is just put the screw through this corner here to hold it in place. And hopefully that'll keep it held down. Yeah. That's probably about right. Okay, well, we'll find out in a bit. We'll put these wires back on. I think that's going to be the most complicated part of this. Right, well, I'm going to be using the magnifier again, but I can't see through that if the camera's in the way, so I'm going to bring you over the top here. Right, now I'm right-handed, and the wires are coming in from this side as well. It's a little bit tricky. Perhaps I can just spin this round and try and do it the other way up. Yeah, I think that's going to be easier for me. Right, they're all in place, those. Okay, now getting this lined up might be slightly tricky. We're going to get these 4 buttons to go through the rubber sections here, so we're going to have to lever it in from that direction. We're also going to make sure that hold switch is in the right place. So at the moment, it's in the position towards the top of the case, so we need to make sure that is in the same position. I think that's about it. Let's give it a go. Okay, so these now, we need to push them into the top. We've also got to watch that little pull there for the battery compartment. We've got to make sure that's on the inside. There we go. Right, okay. Let's just check that that hold switch is operating. Yeah, that feels right. It does feel a bit springy at the moment, but we'll find out. Put the screws in. Right, let's stick a battery in. So that goes in there. Let's press play, see what happens. Oh, and guess what? We can't press play, so something's not lining up, is it? Yeah, this isn't right. Okay, start again. I think what we'll do, we'll just pull this headphone thing out of here, because I think that could just be released like that. It just gives us a bit more ability to get around this. And I'm just going to have to unscrew this again. Let's just see what's going on underneath here. There's something catching. So of course now I've got it all soldered back in. I can't really get to the bits I need to properly, but let's just see if we can just edge this out of here. Okay, so that's play, which isn't locating. Fast forward, which isn't locating. Rewind, which isn't locating. And then stop, which is getting stuck down. If you pull stop back up again, it's all right. Okay. Oh, I really don't want to desolder those things again, but it looks like I'm going to have to. The trouble is, with us having to solder it back together before we can test it, we can't be too sure it's going to work until we've got the whole thing back in one piece. But we can at least make sure that the mechanism's locating properly, which it clearly isn't doing at the moment. When you look at that stop button, it looks like it's got bent, doesn't it? It's not in line with the others. Maybe that's what the issue is. Maybe this has also got bent over the years. Let's just bend it back. Ah, look at that. I think we just had a bent piece of metal. So, as I spin this now, you can see the motor and flywheel, one assembly there. So it does have a metal flywheel, however small. We can play it in that direction, and then no doubt play it in the other direction like so. This little bit here is moving in the middle correctly. Yeah, I think it's alright, that. It was just a bent stop lever. Well, I hope it was. Let's find out. Let's put it back together again. Oh no, hold on. The wire's come off now, off the headphones. I'll need to find out where that's come from. Oh, not too difficult to find. You see here, luckily it's labelled up as black because that's the black wire that's come off, so I'm going to pop that back on there. The trouble is, the more times you take these things apart, the more likely you are to damage them. What we need to do is screw this down, solder it back on, solder the wire back onto the headphones, and hopefully this time we'll get a little bit more action out of this thing. Right, now I'm much happier with the way this circuit board's sitting. It feels like it's in the right position now. We've got the wires back on there, we've got the wire back on the headphone output. The tape that's supposed to hold that wire in place isn't holding it anymore, so I'm just going to put a bit of this stuff on instead, just to hold that down, stop it getting snagged on anything. And then we'll pop that back in the other half of the case once we assemble it. So let's get it back together again now. Hopefully this time we're going to be more successful. As with anything, I'm sure if I was doing this again, I'd be able to do it a lot quicker and easier next time around. Right, there we go. Right, go the other way, yeah. Fast forward, rewind, play again. Yeah, all looks all right. Right, well, it looked clean before and it looks just as clean after. I don't think this thing's really seen very much use at all. Now, I want to point out that this video isn't a demonstration of how to repair something. It's just a video about me trying to repair this particular thing. The reason I mention that is because fix your audio. It lists the things that you could do with doing when you're repairing a cassette player. And there's 3 levels here, and they're very good how they've listed all these things. Clean the head, capstan and pinch roller. Well, I haven't even cleaned the capstan and pinch roller, so I've failed there. Goes down, clean the switches, replace all the capacitors, replace grease, lubricate things, set the azimuth. Yeah, how many of those things have I done? Well, I've replaced the belt and I've cleaned the head. So yeah, this is not the professional's way of restoring a cassette deck. This is just me trying to get this one working. Anyway, now that it is working, let's have a listen to it. Right, well, I've got that plugged into my speakers, so pop that in the headphone output. We'll stick a bit of one of Anders tapes on here. Let's have a listen. Wow, that mega bass certainly kicks. Ridiculous. That's working just fine, and the mega bass on that is ridiculous. Perhaps a bit OTT, but still. Okay, now I've broken out the wout and flutter machine. Now, just to test that things are calibrated properly, I've got a 3 kHz tone on this Walkman. If I press play now, it sounds like this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is plug that into this, and all these meters should give us perfect results. Right, so these are the results that you should expect on the finest settings on both scales. The speed on the left here is as close to 0 as that needle's going to go. Same on the right with the wout and flutter. So you want them both to be hitting 0 if at all possible. Let's see what it looks like with the tape. So we'll just pop it in here. Right, well, with both scales set to 3%, we're looking at the bottom row on each. Now, if we start on the left-hand side on the speed, you can see there, it's running slow, and it's running, I would say, around about 1.5% slow. Now, there's no point trying to drill that down because it would just send the needle off the left-hand side. We'll see if we can adjust that in a little bit. Moving across here, though, to the flutter. Again, we're looking at the bottom. We're looking around about 0.25% perhaps there. Let's drill that down a bit more. So we've moved it into a 1% scale. So we're looking at the top row now. So yeah, round about 0.3 wout and flutter. And remember, the tape itself might be introducing that level of wout and flutter. So that's as good as I'm going to get it using the equipment I've got here. But we'll see if we can adjust this speed a little bit using that pot on the top that's inside the pressure release valve. Now, if I wasn't making this video, I probably would have just left it where it was, but we'll just see if we can adjust it. So keep your eye over there on that one, and I'll see if I've got a screwdriver that fits in there. Right, so let's just up the speed a bit. There we go, you can see the needle moving on the left. I'm going to let go there. And that's pretty much perfect on the speed now. Now along the top of the screen here you might be able to make out this black bar. That can be moved between these positions, and every time it's moved it makes a rather annoying beep. But here on the left under MB, that's where you choose the mega bass. You can switch it on or off from there. Next one along is the tape type, if you want to just play regular tape or metal/chrome. Next one, the automatic volume limiter system for the headphones to reduce the maximum volume that can come out of your headphones. You can switch that on like so. And then finally the FM mode, that's so that you can choose between picking up stations a little bit further apart or just reducing down the sensitivity so it only picks up the local stations. Now, as far as these 40 radio presets are concerned, they're split into the 4 categories. You've got 7 for the TV, 4 for the weather, 24 for FM, 5 for AM. Now, where I am, I can only pick up things on FM, and I can pick up about 8 stations with any quality. So I've saved those into the presets here. I'll just turn it on now. They're not coming through particularly good at the moment, though. Got the volume control at the bottom here. As you can hear, quite a bit of interference on some of these. But that's just because of where I am at the moment in this back room. If I got outside it would be a lot better. And it's picking up the radio through the wire here. Your headphone wire is used as the antenna for FM. As far as AM, it uses a little bar on the bottom, but it's no use to me because I just can't get any AM stations where I am. But yeah, radio's working fine, and as you can see, volume's working well. Hold switch, that's working as well. I don't know if you can see on the screen there. Hold appears. So I've got those lined up correctly. So overall, it's working just fine. Now clearly this is not the best personal stereo cassette player that was ever made, and yet despite the fact it's Sony's swan song in this area, it's their end of the line, it's a budget model, it gets the basics right. I 100% trust this to play any of my tapes without damaging them, and it also makes them sound good as well. That mega bass is insane, and if you happen to have a tape that you thought might sound a little bit thin because this doesn't have a Dolby B decoder in it, well, stick the mega bass on and all your problems evaporate. And I think this is just a really nice little object, very simple, but it does the job. And it's a shame that Sony stopped making that cassette mechanism, the one that's inside here, because that would still be viable today to anyone wanting to make a nice little personal stereo cassette. And you could make one a lot smaller than this. There's a lot of spare room inside this case. And yet, unfortunately, the only mechanisms we get nowadays are much inferior to this and don't give anything like the same level of performance. So yeah, if you want a personal stereo cassette, you've got to go back in time a little bit, and even if you go back to the very end of the line for the Sony ones, you'll still get something far, far better than anything that anyone is making today, and probably quite likely to ever make in the future. But there you go. That's the S2 Walkman. Hope you've enjoyed having a look at this one today. I'm very glad I got this one working, and if I do ever happen to want to go out in the rain while listening to my tapes, I'll be taking this one with me. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.